Okay. So good morning, guys. Yes, in the last class we have seen some issues with our external reports getting generated. When I tried to debug them, I understood there was some problem with using this get extend test. Only if the test is getting failed for some reasons it was null. I don't know, why it did, so that when it is non-null we want that to go inside, but it's actually this is returning me a null. So what I can do is, somebody suggested, we can take a reference of this extent alone. Okay, so that it gives us a proper results every time. Okay, so if this is null, then I want to go inside this, do the initialization. If it is not null, okay, then I want to go inside, flush it, and then do the unload. So I want to do this, right? So I'll also make my test to get failed by going to the, so let's try to change this, and let's try to run it. So hereafter, if you run it, you have to run it from your testng.xml. You should not run from your tap test, because we are using a listeners. Otherwise you will get a null pointer exception when using the reports. Okay, so once this is done, right, so we have almost covered all the parts, but important criteria in terms of a mobile automation framework is to run your test on multiple devices. This is a pretty common use case that we will get. Okay, so now we have to do some changes in order to run our test cases in multiple devices. So for that we need something called as data provider from our TestNG. Okay, let this test run. So if you notice, there is a session error and my test got failed. That's okay, because I have voluntarily made it to fail. And let's try to reload the disk, and reload from disk, and let's try to open this. Okay, now the test got failed, but this time we also got the views drag and drop page, and we can now understood there is a exclamation mark, so that we need to go and adjust this. Okay, so yeah, now our code is working absolutely fine. So I can go to tab test, I can add one more exclamation mark so that it get passed. Okay, so good. So this is the only change that we did. Everything is working fine. Now we will see about how we can work with data provider. So again, guys, who already know about data provider, who doesn't know about data providers, why we use data provider? Anyone?
Actually, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So we made a class using this Appium string locator, but we didn't make it a class with a by.
See, your voice is not clearly audible. You can type in your key in your questions in the chat, Zoom chat. Okay, good. So anyone knows what is data provider and why we use data provider? Any idea?
Hi, Amutan. This data provider we can use for testing up with multiple data, or if you want any test data to be fed into our application, we can use this data provider. Like suppose we want to feed 1,000 users in our application, then we can create 1,000 users in our Excel file, read that, and feed those details in our application. We can use this for
Okay,
as a
okay,
data provider. We can use, like, we can take this approach to feed.
okay. So Monica, to answer your question, we have already used all those things in our code. Okay, if you have doubts, you can go and watch the previous videos. Okay, in the drag and drop page, we are using @Android find by, which is similar to your find by. Find by returns you web element, Android find by returns you Android element. You can store it in a web element as well, but this is the good way, trying to specify more generic type. Okay, and we also used all these things. Okay, we also used dynamic locator strategy as well. Okay, whatever you want, whatever you feel comfortable, you can use it. Okay, good. Now Adi, coming to your answer, right? Though we can achieve this using for loop, right? So if there are 1,000 users as well, I can run a for loop. Okay, I can run a for loop, and then okay, I can do all this operation. But when I run a for loop, what happens? Okay, if there is a failure in the, suppose I am trying to run 1,000 iterations like he's mentioning. Okay, if there is a failure, if there is a failure, okay, if there is a failure um, in fifth test data, okay, then what happens? The remaining test data will never be executed. Okay, that is one of the problem. Okay, then you fix the fifth test data, you are trying to rerun it again in 12th test data, it is again failing. So you need to fix your 12th and then you have to rerun it. So at the end of the day, if you run a for loop inside the test class, okay, in test method, what happens? It will, at the final results will be one ran, okay, one test ran, one got passed, or at the maximum you'll get one got failed. Okay, but we are actually using 1,000 data. Okay, and it is very hard for us to debug all the 1,000 data and then get a result. Okay, but in case of data provider, if you are using 1,000 data, it will tell you 1,000 tests got ran. Okay, 800 got passed, 200 got failed. Okay, it's better that we analyze what are all the failure at one glance instead of running a for loop doing all the operations. Okay, that's a pretty good advantage of using data provider. Okay, good. So now we are going to use data provider in our code. So what I'm going to do, let's take an example. Let me feed two data. Okay, string username, maybe string password to my test method. Okay, I'm using a data provider. Let's name it as get data. And I'm also creating on data provider name it as get data. Okay, so for now it's returning void, but most people tells, okay, you have to use object two-dimensional object array for the return type. Again, it can be single dimensional object array, it can be string array. Okay, there are a lot of things, we'll come to that later, but for now just understand we have to pass it like this. Okay, now we have like this, right? So I need to feed username and password. Let's do it. Username, password. So what I'm going to do, return new object array. Okay, and can directly write it in line, right? So username is, let's say, abcd comma 1234. Okay, and then I can also add one more data that I have to run. efgh is the username, and 5678 is my password. Okay, now what happens? This particular test will be ran two times. The first time it will use the username as this abcd, password as 1234. Second time, while it running, it uses this as the username and 5678 as the password. Okay, let's try to check and see what's happening. Yeah, so now it ran, right? It ran absolutely fine, but most importantly what I want to highlight here is total test run is 2 and all of them got passed. There is no failure. In case of, if you are using for loop, you will get only test ran as 1. Okay, even if you use 1,000 data. So this is pretty cool, right? Then how can we optimize this? There is a problem with this. Okay, normally we don't just pass two test data to our test method. That is pretty uncommon, right? Who will have just two days test data for your test case? We normally have hundreds of test data, or at least 10 to 15 test data. So in those cases, how can I use it? So the important thing that we need to understand is the first dimension here in the object array. Okay, the first dimension here indicates how many times you want to run the test. Okay, how many times you want to run the test. Okay, the second dimension, right? The second dimension here indicates how many parameters you want to feed to your test. In our case, both of them are 2. Suppose let me add one more data here. Okay, let's name it as 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, now the number of time I want to iterate is 3. Okay, number of time I want to iterate is 3, and number of test data that will be fed to my test method is 2. Okay, so the size of this particular matrix is 3 by 2. Okay, it's 3 by 2. Okay, so this is what you have to understand. Since we have given it as a inline, it can actually understand it is 3, it is 2. Okay, if you are writing in a 2 different steps, like first you are declaring object 2-dimensional object array data equal to new object array, and then in the brackets you need to mention what is the size, then only you can add those. Okay, since this is an inline, you don't have to declare it specifically. Good. So if you understand this, then everything comes in handy. So if you want to pass more data, okay, in the first time itself I want to pass some more data, let's say address and then a phone number, some phone numbers I want to pass. Okay, I want to pass some phone numbers. Okay, something like this. Now if you can tell what is the matrix size is 3 by 4. So number of times you want to run is 3, but number of test data you want to feed to your test method is 4. Okay, so you have to go and add one more string. Let's name it as address. Okay, and the last one is string phone number. Okay, phone number, something like this. Okay, so you can understand this, right? So then every time you want to add more number of test data to your test method, you have to increase this, right? Passing more than 3 test parameters to a method is something that I see as a crime. Okay, so don't do that. So if you're doing something like that, maybe you have to avoid doing that, going forth. Okay, don't pass maximum. You can pass maximum of 2, at the worst 3. Okay, you should not pass more than that. It's very bad. Okay, it's very hard to even understand what you are passing, what you are fetching from it. Okay, that's very bad. That's why we have something called as collection in Java, where we are going to store everything in a collection and then we're going to feed it to our test method. Okay, if you notice, this is, you have a username and then it is having a value. You have a password and that is having a value. You have an address and that is having a value. So you have key and value, right? So in those cases, you can basically use map to store all this information. Suppose if you want to run this code now, okay, it will run 3 times. Okay, I am not printing the address and the phone number, but that's okay. It ran 3 times. Okay, so this will work, but that's a problem. We are feeding a lot of test data. If the test data even grows more, you have to pass more number of test data to the method signatures. That becomes very clumsy. So that's why what we are going to store everything in a map, and then we're going to load it in the object array, and then we're going to return it. Okay, so let's try to remove this. Okay, maybe we can name it as get. So this may be for your reference. Okay, what I'll do, I'll create one more data provider. And so here what I can do, I can return object array. So for now, let's return that. Okay, guys, just to, I want to highlight one more thing. If you notice, we are basically returning all these as a string. Okay, then it can be even string array. Okay, so even though IntelliJ IDE writes it as a problem, it still works. Okay, let's try to use a get data 1 now and then try to run it. Okay, it will work. In Eclipse, it won't show you any error, but in IntelliJ, it will show you any one error, like there is a problem. You cannot use a string array as your return type, but this code will absolutely work fine. Okay. I have even raised this to IntelliJ IDE as a bug. They told, you can go and switch off these problems, but we will continue to be like this. because that's what the TestNG documentation suggests. That's what they are telling, but it will still work. Okay, so I am giving more generic, specific data type here. Instead of object, I'm giving string. Okay, good. So in here, right? So let's try to use a map here, and then we'll try to return it. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm constructing a map, the previous values. Okay, string comma string. Guys, please turn off your videos. Equal to new hash map. Okay, let's try to import it. Once you do this, I'm trying to add all the information whatever we have in the form of map. Okay, map.put. Okay, first one is the key is username and the value is ABCD. Okay, for the second one, something like this. You can add as many as values you want, but for now I'm just adding only one map. So only one value. I will add one more map. Okay, so that I want to run it multiple times, right? String comma string. Okay, let's name it as map one. Okay, so we can add like this. Good. Now what I can do, I can basically change this to get data. Okay, and now I'm going to store this in an object array. Okay, so return new object array, or first let me put it in a list. Let's assume, let's make it very simple, guys. Okay, so let's create a string, comma string. So I'm gonna add each of these into map. Okay, and then I also want to add list dot add map one. Okay, that's it. Now whatever the list I have, I am convert to object array. Okay, to array. Okay, to convert to object array. Again, you can cast it to like this, or you can change this to object array. Okay, both is fine. Okay, so what I have done, okay, previously all these informations are causing me a lot of troubles that I need to pass a lot of parameters here. But what I have done here is I have whatever the data that I want to run, I am storing in a collection, better collection, that is map as key and value pair. I also want to run this test case one more time, so I have created one more test data for the second iteration. Now I have stored all this information in a list. Okay, list that holds, in each index it holds a map. Okay, so this is your first iteration test data, this is your second iteration test data. Since data provider will not accept a list of map as a return type, I am just converting it to an array. Okay, you are converting a list to an array. Okay, you can also directly store this in a object array, that's also possible, but I am using list, that's okay. Okay, good. So now at the end of the day, I'm returning an object array. But if you notice this time, the first in as I have mentioned, in object array, in a two-dimensional object array, your first dimension is number of times. Okay, number of times. Okay, in this array there are two values. Okay, in this array there are two values, two maps. Okay, so this will be executed two times. Okay, and the second dimension here, okay, second dimension here is number of parameters to the test method, number of params to test method, right? And if you notice very closely, the number of parameters is just one, because see, you can treat this as an two-dimensional object array. You can treat this as a two-dimensional object array with sizes 2 by 1. Okay, so the number of test data to your test method is just one now. Okay, so instead of passing this all the information, you just pass string, comma string. Now, if you want the username value, then you call the get method and then call it. Okay. Okay, I thought there will be some post prefix. Okay, map dot get password. Same way you can write more thing. Okay, map dot get address. Okay, let's try to run the test, and the data provider is get data, and then see what's happening. So if you notice, it is A B C D F G, and then it's printing this particular value, but it is overriding this one. Okay, what is happening? Okay, I think I have to use map one dot put. Okay, okay, sorry guys. Okay, now again try to run the test. Okay, now this is working absolutely fine. Okay, but what we have done is we have done the optimization of the data provider so that we can only pass only one parameter to our test method. You add more data, no problem, I'll add it here. Okay, you added phone number, no problem, you can add it. You don't have to change anything in your code, right? So your code remains very clean now. Okay, that's the use of collection, right? So okay guys, even if this particular thing is needing 4 data, this is needing 3 data, that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day we are going to pass it as just one map, hash map. So it doesn't matter. Previously all the things need to have same number of count. Okay, that is also another use case that we have solved here. Any doubts so far in the data provider that we see? Mhm.
Is it
Amutan, like, what if we pass a null value? It will return a null or it will throw exception?
No, it'll return null only. See, if you store a null here, you can store a null. Okay, you can store a null, but while getting it, it'll if you are just printing it, it won't throw any error. Okay, it'll just print null, but you are trying to operate something on it, then it will throw error. Okay, it's like just your normal collection, right? If in a hash map you can store a null value. Okay, it's just your normal way of using a map. Okay, any other question?
like in this we are getting by using get method, we are getting all the values in the map. So is it way to get on this second record only, get zero, get username, we will pass index, right? Index.
Monica, seriously, I couldn't follow you properly because there are a lot of background noise and your voice is not clear. Please key in your questions in a form of chat. Okay, I'll definitely answer. Good. So now we have learned about the data provider. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to take this knowledge to our mobile automation framework. Okay, the first use case that we are trying to solve here is I want to run this particular test case in multiple devices. Okay, since I don't have multiple devices with me, the Browserstack is already having some devices. Okay, we know it has let's delete this whole build, and then let's try to reboot. So if you notice, it has two devices. It has given two devices. One is Samsung Galaxy S10e and Google Pixel 3. So it has two devices. We want to run it on two devices for now. But then if you are having a real license, then you might have to run it on all these machines. Okay, Samsung Galaxy 24, X6, X7, X8, all these devices, right? So in those cases, how we can make this code more efficient? Okay, good. What I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce a new data provider. Okay, let's name it as get data. It's not a problem. I'll also create a data provider here. Okay, now the same knowledge. Okay, whatever the values that you want to pass, you can okay, return null. You can store it in a hash map, then you store all those in a list, and then you return that object array. So that's what we're going to do. So First, we will construct all this. We'll construct the second iteration test data. In the first iteration test data, we want to construct whether this is Google Pixel 3. In the second one, we want to construct whether it is Samsung Galaxy S10e, and we want to store everything in a map, and then we will return it just step by step. Okay. If you notice, we have some Browserstack code already. We have written that. Okay. Okay. So we have already hard coded some value here. Okay. We need to change this. If you want to run this on Samsung Galaxy S10e, we need to change this value to Samsung Galaxy S10e. Okay, we need to change that. So how we will change it? There is no input parameters to this method. Okay, how will I change this at runtime? Either you need to move all this code, as into the data provider and then feed it from your data provider, or let these things remain. This is going to remain the constant, right? They all going to remain the constant. We're going to run the same app. We're going to run, project is same, build is same, everything going to remain the same. All I want to change is this. Okay, only the device I want to change in our case. But there may be cases that you might need to, suppose if there are version. Okay, this is since both the devices are 9.0, we are not changing the Android version. Otherwise, we also need to change the version. So let's assume you have to change these two things. Okay, you have to change these two things, and we want to operate. Okay, how will you do that? Let's try to do it. Okay, let's first parameterize two things. Okay, let's create a map. Okay, create a map new hash map, and here map dot put. First, what I want to put, device. Okay, and what is the value? And then the device value is this. And map dot put version, I think that's 9.0. Okay, let's check it once again. Sorry, OS underscore version. Okay, yes, you need to properly mention the key, otherwise it will not work. Okay, so this is the first map I want. This is my first iteration test data. Okay, done. What is my second iteration test data? Map one. Okay, and I'll put map one. Here I need to tell Samsung Galaxy S10e. So if you choose this, it will give you Samsung Galaxy S10e. So S10e. So this is my second test data. For that, voice version is this. What I want to do, I want to create one list. Hash map. Okay. I have already mentioned the arguments why you cannot infer it. I'm using Java 8 only. Shouldn't throw any error. Why it's showing error? Okay, sorry guys. It should be list, new array list. Okay, list dot add. First, I'm adding the first iteration data, that is map. Second, I want to add a list dot add map one. Okay, this is my second test data. Once you add all these things, okay, what you can do, you can convert this into object array, two array. That's it. Now this particular test case will run two times. One will be on this, one will be on that. But we are feeding this test data to this test method. That's okay. But we need to change the code, right? So for that, we need to do some changes. Okay, let's copy this. Okay, I have created all those things. Driver.init driver is called in my base test. Okay, here only I have this init driver. Okay, if I pass the map test data to this init driver method, then I can pass it to the get method here, then I can pass it to the get driver method here. If I pass the map to this get driver method, then I can change these values, whatever the values we have here. But in our case, we are going to change the browser stack values. Okay, so let's open the browser stack implementation, and we can only change this. So I need to pass all this information from there to here. Then only I can do the changes, right? So if you notice, if I have this code here, okay, I don't know, I cannot inject the data provider equal to, we cannot do that. Okay, so for now, simplicity, let's move this code to the tab test. Okay, I'm passing the map here. Okay, that's it. It will throw error. So let's go here, and then we have to mention map. Okay, and I also need to pass this to the map here. Okay, let's go and alter this code. Okay, guys, we have a requirement that we need to change some desired capabilities at the runtime, so we have to do all these things. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to feed it to my get driver method. Okay, so you need to alter the get driver method. That previously it was not taking any parameters, now it is taking some parameters, so we need to go here and adjust all those things. Okay, this is one time effort, guys. Okay, if I directly feed this information, you wouldn't have understood that day. So that's the reason what I am doing. I am just doing the changes now. Okay, I'm telling you reason why I'm passing this particular map. Okay, we need to change some desired capabilities at the runtime. Okay, some are static, we want to keep them static. Some are dynamic, so we want to feed them as a dynamic values. Okay, so let's go to all the implementation classes, and then we'll add it. Okay, let's also go to the local driver implementation. Okay, and then we can add it. Okay, pcloud implementation, add it. SaaS lab implementation, add it. Okay, now let's go to the browser stack implementation, which are we are interested. So we want to change these values, right? So let's try to comment this out. So now I have values from the map. I want to feed it to this capabilities. Okay, so what I'm just doing, so map dot, there is a method called for each. Okay, you can use a conventional way of doing it, but I'm using a Java 8 way. Okay, so if it is accepting by consumers, so what it is, if there is a key comma value that you have, okay, give it to me. What I will do, I will do capabilities dot set capability, whatever the key and value you are giving, I'm just going to pass it to this set capability method, right? Very simple. So map is having one key value, I'm going to set that into the set capability of key comma value. So now, since we are directly taking the value and directly feeding it to the capabilities, there is no need to write a lambda expression. Rather, we can inherit, use a method references. So you can just use capabilities colon set capability. And guys, if you don't understand what the statement does is, it does very simple operation. It reads all the key value from map and store it in capabilities. That's it. Okay, we are constructing the desired capabilities at the runtime. Even if you pass 100 values, it will iterate one by one, and then it will store them in all in the capabilities object here. Okay, that's it. Once we are done, we don't need this anymore because we have parameterized that. Okay, maybe I'll add it as a first statement so that we don't feel any confusion. Okay, good. That's it. Once you've done that, if you want to see what all the capabilities are added at runtime, maybe you can add capabilities. There is a method called as map that will convert the capabilities to a map. Then I am doing a for each, and then I'm printing all the values. If someone is giving me key and value, I'm going to print key and value. This is for my debugging purpose, whether it is printing all those values to us. Okay, but now at the runtime, you are feeding two values. One is device and another one is version. In the same case, if you want to change any other values, you can also change it. Suppose you want to run it on iOS device, then what you need to do, you also need to parameterize this platform name, and then Android and iOS. You need to add one more value into the map. Okay, so if you're using Android and iOS, then the app type will be different, so you also need to parameterize this value and the automation name. So whatever the thing that you feel dynamic, that you have to change, you just add it into the map and then feed it like this. Okay, and then remove those static values from here. Okay, as simple as that. Now let's go to the tab test and let's see whether everything is set. Okay, this is set, this is set. Okay, this will return me 2 iterations. Okay, this will run. Okay, all those things are done. Let's try to run it from the testng.xml, right? Let's try to run this testng.xml. And guys, you can feed all the values from the data provider also. That is also not a problem. You store everything in a map and then you feed it. That's also not a problem. If you notice, at the runtime, the device name is Google Pixel. OS version is 9.0. So we are constructing desired capabilities at the runtime. Okay, you can feed everything at the runtime. That is your wish. But I would like to keep what are the things that are static. I'll try to keep them as static, and then only I feed the dynamic values. Your wish, your wish. So drag and drop is success now. Okay, now it has to run one more time. Okay, see it's running one more time. So this time it has picked the 2 values. This map is having devices TestNG, OS version as 9. Okay, it's now trying to run it same test with another set of test data. That means it will run on Samsung Galaxy. Okay, we can go to the map. We can go to this particular browser stack and we can check whether it is working. Okay, one is completed. So if you notice, Google Pixel 3 is completed. It is running on TestNG. Okay. So I should click on views, then drag and drop. Then it should need to drag and drop it. Yeah, it's dragging and then drop. Yeah, so this is how it is. Your test got worked absolutely fine. So if you want to optimize more, what you need to do, you need to add more data. Suppose if you want to run it on different data, you can add one more map and then add it. Again, guys, I have hard coded it here, but the thing is, you can fetch this information from a JSON file or from a YAML file or from a Excel sheet. Wherever you want to fetch this information, you fetch, you read it from that, and then you just construct the list of map at the end. Okay, once you construct a list of map and then do a list.to array so that it converts to a object array. Okay, here I have hard coded it, but in your case you will read these information from an external file. Okay, that's the only difference. Okay, now if you notice, we have moved this driver.init driver and here, just because we cannot use this in our base test. Okay, before method we don't know, we cannot use data provider annotation and all. So in those cases, that's why we moved it here. Let's try to use it in the same place itself. Okay, there is only one thing that is wrong here. Okay, you cannot use data provider. Then how will I inject this? Okay, so you have a lot of injection, 4 different values that you can inject. One among them is object array. So whatever the data that you have, so you have to understand one thing. So whatever data you feed it to test method from data provider is available as object array in the before method. Okay, you can use this to inject the values. Again, guys, if you're not comfortable using this way, just move this code to your every test. That is not a problem. Okay, you call your driver initialization in your test method. That is no problem at all. If you're not comfortable using this, please use the old way. Okay, now this object array is having a lot of values. Okay, this object array is having in the 0th index, right? In the 0th index, it's having a map. Okay, it's having a map. Okay, so I need to get that 0th index and then I need to get the map out of it. Okay, let's do it. In the 0th index, it has a map. Okay, so data of 0th index is having a map. Okay, now I want to convert this into map. Okay, how will I do that? Okay, you have a data array, so what I can do, I'll just convert into map of string comma string. So import this. Just typecast. Then we'll store it in. That's it, guys. So yes, it will throw something. So maybe you can add and check the more. Roll back. Okay, it's okay. We are not. We have to choose. Do is instance of check, but that's okay. We know that it it's coming as map, so we don't have to do that. So okay, now whatever the value that we found there is now available in the data of 0. So now we are typecasting that to map. Okay, and then storing in a reference. Okay, now we are passing this reference. Okay, so that you don't have to write this piece of code every time. You don't have to write driver dot init driver and then you need to call this method. No, it's not needed. It can be handled in the before method itself like this. Okay, good. So now if you want to even run it parallelly, okay, first let's check whether it is working. Maybe if you want to run, maybe I'll also add one more capability that I want to run both the test in parallel. Okay, in those cases what you can do, you can go here and then you can tell parallel equal to true, which means it has two iteration. When you tell parallel equal to true, it means these two iteration will be returned by data provider to your test method in parallel. Okay, let's try to run it and then check whether it is working. So if you notice, both the sessions got created at the same time. So we are running it in parallel. Okay, one of them got completed. Okay, and one other one is still running. Okay, good. That's it, guys. So we have now. So if you also notice the logs, it's being cluttered because all these are running in parallel. Okay, good. So we have also done the data provider. If you have any doubts, you can ask me now. Is any doubts? Doubts? Okay, then good. Now we have just did half of it, right? Now I want to sometime run it on local. I also have some emulators here. I want to run it on emulator sometime. Okay, or my real device I have here. Okay, I also want to run it. How do I do it? So the only thing that is we have done here is in the driver class we are feeding this mode value from, we are getting it from the property utils. Okay, if this value also you can get it from data provider, then you can also add this here. Okay, let's go here, map. Okay, you can add a mode as well, map dot put. I'm having some mode as okay Browserstack. Okay, which means you want to run this on Browserstack. Suppose you want to run this on local, then you can add map one dot put local. Okay, or sorry, mode as local. Okay, okay, you can add like this. Okay, and then you can try to run a different thing. Okay, since we are passing everything from property file. Okay, we have to now change this property file src test resources. We have a configuration file here. We have modus bs. Okay, you can also feed this from the uh, TestNG data provider instead of from the property file. Okay, that is also an option. But who normally runs one test in local device, one in emulator, and one in Browserstack? That normally don't happen, right? So that's why we have kept this here in the property file. Okay, so if you want to do some testing and other stuff, you can use your emulator, or if you want to run your regression testing, you can use the cloud. Okay, if you have the access. Okay, either you will have in a real time, you will run it on either on your local devices or in the cloud. Okay, there will not be combination of both in for the same test case. Okay, good. I also want to cover one more thing. Let's take an example. I have something called as driver factor. Okay, for some reasons, right, for some reasons, let's say in the config properties, let's name it as source labs, or maybe c test. Okay, I'm giving c test, but there is no options, right? We haven't written any code for c test. Okay, we have local, we have Browserstack, source labs, and pcloudy. There is no option, we have to add it again. So in those cases it has to tell proper error. But in this case, what it will do, if I run this test, it will return null. Okay, because it will not satisfy any of these if conditions. So by default it will return null. So next time you are trying to click on an element, it will throw null pointer exception. But the actual exception is what? The actual exception is you didn't configured a particular mode of running. Okay, so let's try to run it now. Let's try to run this test and see what's happening. Okay, so if you notice, we are getting no enum with more c test. That is also fine. Okay, again, yeah. So since we are converting it to enum, it is giving you proper error. But if you're using a string, it might not be giving you proper error. So at those cases, okay, you can add or throw a new exception. Okay, if that is not matching any of those. Okay, if else, you can add an else condition, and then you can add throw new runtime exception. Okay, since we have created one framework exception, you can also do that. Okay, we have created our framework exception here, and you can also throw that. Okay, for that, I'm just giving you an example. Okay, if you pass a string comma message while creating, you can just feed it to the super method. That is your runtime exception. Okay, throw new framework exception. Why it's not throwing? Yes, throw. Why I'm not getting the framework exception? Okay, maybe I didn't made it as public. That's the reason. The constructor needs to be public so that I can access it from anywhere. Now I am getting, so I can tell no cloud provider with the name you mentioned is configured, something like this. Okay, you can add those. Okay, so in this case, anyways, when it is doing the conversion from string to enum itself, it is throwing error. But I'm just giving you an idea where we can use runtime exceptions. Okay, In this case, while you are doing modes.value of itself, it will throw this. You cannot find a mode called ctest. Okay. But yeah, but this is an example where you can use runtime exceptions. Okay, if you want, you can create your own runtime exceptions. Okay, if something is not matching, then you can throw some exceptions. Okay, maybe for example, okay, you're trying to choose an item and then you are trying to click on it. Okay, if this mobile element is not returning you anything. Okay, if it is null. Okay, mobile element dot is null. Okay, maybe to check the null, you can do objects dot is null, and then mobile elements. Okay, you didn't get anything out of it. Okay, or is empty. Okay, then what I want to do, I want to throw new runtime exception, something like this. Okay, you can add all these things to throw a exception when there is an exception happening. Okay, good guys. So I think we have covered pretty much almost all the things. Tomorrow we will cover about Appium CLIs and what else. We if I somebody has requested that we want some sessions to ask our doubts. Okay, you can also do that tomorrow. We'll cover Appium CLI tomorrow. I think that's pretty much about it.
Amodan?
Yeah.
So we are not going to do Excel or JSON reading?
You can do that, right? We already covered that. How many times we will cover? You already know that, right? How to read from Excel. Okay, if you want, we can do it. It's not.
Yeah. And one more thing, Amodan, like we created a library, right? So you said like it's for native apps, right? But can we? Yeah, but because I am developing the framework with you only, right? But I don't know why I have to put that thread.sleep. If otherwise it's giving me error. But when I put thread.sleep, it was okay. Like it's working fine. So I am getting exception in like native apps also.
I don't know.
Using thread.sleep.
You don't have to use thread.sleep. Use explicit wait.
Yeah, means we have to use, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Like we have to use waits in native apps also because I used it.
I don't know. I didn't use anything so far. I am not getting any exceptions.
But yeah, but but I got it. That's what I'm saying. And but when I use thread.sleep,
but I am not getting it. If you are getting it, use an explicit wait. Why you are using thread.sleep? I already added the code for that. I don't know what you are trying to ask. I already added an explicit wait code. Okay, it goes and checks the visibility of that element before doing that operation. I'm giving a maximum wait of 5 seconds. Okay. What else you want to do?
Yeah, actually, I was we did last before that. I was I'm a little back from one more thing. Actually, I was like so this library which we have used, like it's so it's a general method, right? We can use it with this native app. And you said like we like web elements also we're gonna use the same library, or we need to do some change in it.
What do you mean by library? See, we haven't done that.
We will do that.
Okay, we will do that. We haven't done that. We will do that tomorrow. Okay, this is your base page for your native apps. For web apps, we will create one more class, and then we will suppose the scroll to specific element is having this particular code in a native app, but this is different for your web browsers. In web browsers, we scroll using JavaScript executor, or you can use action class to scroll. Okay, you can write those logic there. Yeah, we will create a base class, and then we'll do all those things tomorrow. Okay, that's also part of it. We'll do that.
Yeah, 1 minute. So like more than like this is good for native apps. This library is good for native apps, right? So it means we have, so like in one application, okay, so we are gonna automate either the native or either the web elements, right? Or either the web.
See, normally you'll have only one app in your company. Okay, they will not ask you to do web browser as well as mobile web browsers as well as native app. Normally there will be only native apps. Okay, you will automate only them. Okay, in case you want to develop a framework that supports both, then only we are covering all these things. Okay, otherwise you don't need to learn all these things. Okay, anyway, that will be covered tomorrow, don't worry.
Yeah, this and then JSON. Yeah.
what is yeah
Amuthan, with our Appium CLI, like we can start and stop our Appium server based on our test runs. Correct?
yes
If I'm not wrong.
yes
Mhm.
if you want, but I wouldn't recommend, or we normally don't do that, because why I'm saying, see, we'll see that tomorrow. It's not a big deal. We'll see that tomorrow, why it is not recommended to start and stop using the codes. Okay, we'll do that tomorrow.